If you take an active interest in maintaining the optimum health and well-being of yourself and your family, the New Zealand Journal of Natural Medicine is the magazine you've been waiting for. Having taken Australia and New Zealand by storm, the New Zealand Journal of Natural Medicine is now available in the UK and Europe. Visit www.nznaturalmed.co.uk or call 01626 337 531 to order your copy now.
No matter where you live, globalism affects you. Did you know that the Vinny Eastwood Show has more subscribers than New Zealand Herald TV and is New Zealand's most popular YouTube news channel, where warm-hearted humour and a list of awesome guests talk about crucial issues which the mainstream media ignore? A show where you, the listener, can phone up with questions, comments and suggestions of guests. Vinny is building a hub to connect truthers with raw information they need to become active. He can help you gain further skills such as website building, producing audio and video, and creating revenue streams in your own multimedia environment. Because Vinny supports such a wide range of people in the truth movement, he is not government or corporate backed and relies entirely on your donations. Give now, give generously, or subscribe for $10 a month for access to ad-free video archives. Just visit thevinnieeastwoodshow.com and click donate.
Do you realise every day we are being put under constant stress from wireless radiation? What's worse is that you don't even know that it's happening. It puts as much stress on our body as if we had a constant viral infection, draining our energy and sapping our strength, or just making us irritable and fatigued. These wireless fields are being emitted from computers, microwaves, mobile phones, power lines, and any electrical appliance. Now there is a solution. A group of research engineers in New Zealand have come up with an active shielding device that shields you from wireless radiation at a cellular level. Blue Shield comes in 3 models: a household, portable, and USB that plugs into any computer. The great thing about Blue Shield is it is very affordable and guaranteed to last. A one-off purchase will see you being protected for years to come. Visit AmericanFreedomRadio.com and click on the Blue Shield banner. Blue Shield, brought to you by the VinnyEastwoodShow.com.
Welcome back.
I've been to Reno, Chicago, Fargo,
It's
Minnesota,
a
Buffalo,
list of the
Toronto,
teleportation
Winslow,
facilities
Sarasota, Wichita, Tulsa, Ottawa,
that Andrew,
Oklahoma, Tampa,
that Andrew has
Panama,
visited.
Manitoba, Bangor.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Vinny Eastwood Show, the show that goes everywhere, man. And there's a lot of people who would sit back, hear what Andrew's saying, instantly dismiss it as fiction, not wanting to look into it further. And I was thinking about this, Andrew, the difficulty with cases like these, particularly with black ops, is that when you turn whistleblower, you come out, and of course you don't have artifacts or relics or things of a physical nature to show people. Like you didn't bring back an alien skull from Mars or any of these things, so that it becomes a story to people because they don't have an extra physical item to sort of back it up. But what I found is if you corroborate stories, okay, so if you've got people who otherwise wouldn't really have met, and they're all saying the same thing, then it adds weight to it. And I was wondering how many other people who have had these experiences, both you and Bernie, have come forward. Is it just you two, or how many others are out there?
Well, I'm the principal whistleblower participant on Project Pegasus. Many of the mid-career professionals and the older engineers and physicists on that project are in fact deceased. Now, in terms of the jump room, which began 10 years later, or at least we entered it 10 years later, around 1980, we have really 6 informants, and we're going to 8. So that would be, in terms of those who have shared direct testimony about firsthand experience, which I would aver is, in fact, direct evidence. I mean, people are sent to jail. Indeed, people are sent to the gas chamber. To the gallows on the strength of direct testimony. So among those who have directly testified and provided direct evidence, therefore, of the notion of taking the jump room to Mars, that would be, or the proposition, would first be Michael Relf, who states that he first went up in 1976, and his is a complicated case where he states that he worked there for 20 years and then was age regressed back in 1996 and rejoined his military unit 20 years after serving on Mars and being age regressed. Then I stepped forward, and then Project Camelot began revealing the experiences of Henry Deacon, who in fact is an individual by the name of Arthur Neumann. And then, as a result of my Project Pegasus revelations, William B. Stillings stepped forward. And then when William Stillings and I were on Coast to Coast, Bernard Mendez stepped forward. But when we did step forward on Coast to Coast, we were joined by the great-granddaughter of President Dwight David Eisenhower, Laura Magdalene Eisenhower, who described how in 2006 and 2007, she was subject to a sophisticated manipulation, essentially, where the U.S. government was trying to recruit her and her two twin boys to relocate to the secret Mars colony via ARC. And I think what they were talking about, and in fact, Bernie confirmed this, which is the ARC was simply a reference to the fact that these jump rooms that they have set up in different parts of the world could be used to evacuate the human population to Mars in the event of an emergency. So I believe that Laura was being offered the opportunity to go to Mars via jump room as well. But let me add, we now have the identity of the naval attaché at the West Coast jump room that the three of us interacted with. We can search for that person. And Bernie and I, through our memory work, have identified one of the other women that was in the night run that Regina was on. In fact, she was the woman who roomed with Regina when we took a nap at a barracks near the El Segundo jump site before doing that night run. And I should add, Vince, that you asked what the jump rooms were like. Maybe now would be an appropriate time to describe what was there at El Segundo. What was there was the elevator that got you from the ground floor up to the 5th floor. We would then get out at the 5th floor, walk across this marble floor where there was a simple counter. There was one person working there for CIA, and we would provide our name, our date of birth, our social security number. I think I was providing my UCLA ID number as well as a student, and then signing the book indicating we were now going to jump. We would then go back in the elevator. The elevator would go up to the 8th floor, which is the top floor of that building, there at 999 North Sepulveda Boulevard in El Segundo, California. And we would feel as a sensation as if the jump room was moving horizontally. And we now know from physical inspection, from visual inspection, that there's kind of a pod that's attached to the southern side of the roof of that building. And then from there, we were still in the elevator chamber itself, but lights would begin flashing at the top and bottom panel of the elevator. And about 10 minutes into the jump, the box-like elevator would begin morphing into a cylinder shape. The side that was now the end of the cylinder had kind of a swirling look to it, like a wormhole. And we'd be in this high-pressure situation for about 5 minutes that was absolutely nauseating because we were being twisted with the jump room, yet not injured. Then it would untwist back in the opposite direction in a spiral direction so that the elevator then resumed its ordinary shape. About another 5 minutes would pass, and then the door would open, and we were on the surface of Mars or whatever artificial holographic planetary domain they were sending to us to. But I should add that we all agree they were sending us off planet. So that was the jump room. The jump room was essentially the elevator of an office building in El Segundo, California that was controlled by Hughes Aircraft. They were either the owner-operator or the owner or the operator, but they were in that building in 1981 and in the early 80s. So it was Hughes Aircraft controlled. We conjecture that Howard Hughes himself may have been working on the jump room technology prior to his death in 1975. That links the building there to a major defense contractor that we know was working on these advanced aerospace projects. But in fact, the jump room was an elevator room. And that, I might add, that's perhaps why they were also sometimes calling, Bernie mentioned, I think he had previously stated to us that in that official document he read, ultimately they boiled all that descriptive paragraph down to government transporter. We were calling it not a teleporter. We were calling it the jump room. But I also heard the term space elevator used several times. And indeed, it was an elevator. It was an elevator in a conventional office context in a beach community southwest of Los Angeles, and namely El Segundo. And yet it had that dual use of being able to somehow morph and be punched through a wormhole in time space simultaneously to take us elsewhere. And it did. We're in agreement that it wasn't some virtual reality generator or some psyop that we were undergoing. We were going to an actual domain that we then explored. And it was relatively unbounded and far bigger than any virtual reality project ever could have been constructed on Earth. It was another place, another world.
Okay, I'm like I said, I'm here to support Andrew. I stepped out because Andrew asked me to, and I had thought about it for quite some time. A lot of issues stepping out like this, very controversial. It wasn't just Andrew. I had been doing research into this matter because I get consulted with from the Navy from time to time. Because after Andrew went back to the Navy to the Camp Hero, and there were other jumps to be made for other reconnaissance. And then, but over the years, as a classification, because I was involved in the legal end before I met Andrew, the matters were classified for 30 years. They wanted to go 150 years, but then when I negotiated with the administration, most of it will be classified for 30 years. And then we see a lot of stuff on YouTube now about Apollo, which has been released. Of course, Senator McCain, people should write their congressman and tell them they want more a release concerning Apollo and the jump rooms, and they might release more. And then the matters were declassified, reworked, and then reclassified. And Andrew was talking about the threat assessment. It's really an assessment. They were assessing the threat because of the jumps that we made and the creatures that we found in the unknown areas. And we didn't know if they were a threat or not. And then there were more encounters with ET or aliens. On all the jumps I made, we always ran into some sort of alien. Grays were predominant on all of them. And then just before I met Andrew, this was being assessed. They were asking everybody across the board. So the assessments across the board. Everyone takes the surveys, the questionnaires sometimes, and everyone's asked a lot of questions. And then you give them your opinion. Did you see this type of creature? You think they're hostile towards us? Are they friendly? Because sometimes some of these creatures would, come over to you and start touching you and start talking to you and whatnot. They seem hostile. They seem friendly. They seem willing to talk to you.
Coming up to break again. It's kind of like whenever you get talking, Bernie, you keep going and keep going. I want you to keep expanding, and then bam, cut off like a parallel universe time loop. You listen to the Vinny Eastwood Show. It's the lighter side of genocide, because in a world so full of chaos and madness, if you lose your sense of humour, you go friggin' nuts, man. Or on AmericanFreedomRadio.com 5 days a week. Archives at thevinnyeastwoodshow.com as well. Thank you very much for listening. We'll be back for a whole other hour in just a few minutes, ladies and gentlemen. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. It is now hour number 2 of the fastest 2 hours in talk radio. It's the Vinny Eastwood Show, broadcasting live from New Zealand, from the fabulously fluoridated capital of Auckland. It's the island change nation in the sunny slave South Pacific. It's fluoridated and Fukushima irradiated, and everybody got a part-time job from the government as an incandescent light bulb. My very special guests are Bernie Mendez and Andrew Basiago. Basiago, like Chicago. Basiago. Now let's see if I can think, because Basiago, when I think about the name, I kind of think about like a loan shark, like a a lone Basiago, you know, like a great
That's
white.
very ironic, Vinny, because when I think of it, I think of a future American president. So maybe
Hey,
it's appropriate we're on two different sides of the world.
hey, and look at it this way: there's not a terribly large amount of difference between a loan shark and a president of the United States, is
No,
there?
there isn't.
Fundamentally. Speaking of breaking down to the fundamentals,
There could be.
yeah, yeah.
There could be.
Now, Andrew, I've heard a lot of talk about this incident with Alfred Weber at the just recently, bringing up your information at a 9/11 conference, something about a being chased with Barack Obama by some kind of dinosaur on Mars. I don't know what the full story is or what Alfred was talking about. I haven't had a chance to go into it. So if you'd actually be able to elaborate and actually tell that story here to the audience, maybe they'll give them some background as well.
Certainly. The air deserves to be cleared on that most important topic of 9/11. When I was a child in Project Pegasus, my father and I were called on an emergency basis to the laboratory maintained by the Aerojet Corporation on the New Mexico Institute of Science and Technology campus at the corner of Bullock Avenue and Leroy Place in Socorro. This was in 1971. And it was in that laboratory in which photo analysts working for Project Pegasus were photoanalyzing not chronovision images, in other words, not holographic images of the future, but information that had been physically ferried back to the present on microfilm, containing essentially a 70-year history of the future. Basically, there was microfilm summaries of future events from the perspective of the early 70s, reaching to the year in which they were retrieved from the future and brought back, and that year was 2045. In fact, I participated in several of those probes to retrieve those canisters of microfilm from a Stargate device that was huge. It was a huge gate that was set up on the Olympic-sized basketball court at a WPA-constructed community center that's still standing in Cerrillos, New Mexico. If any of your guests visit Santa Fe, New Mexico, and they're driving around to the smaller communities, it's really immediately southeast of Santa Fe, these buildings. So we had been jumping forward in time, retrieving those canisters, jumping back from a teleport that was in the building there, and then popping back into view around the microwave tower at the Lobo Overlook Point, due west, 3 miles west of the Continental Divide sign on Highway 160 in southwest Colorado. And from there, we would surrender the microfilm canisters and then be bussed back to New Mexico. Now, when my father and I were called down to the location where that film was being analyzed, we were greeted in the hallway after my dad presented his Department of Defense credentials, and we were cleared by the guard with a gun sitting at the counter there at this C-shaped building there in Socorro, New Mexico. And it was an Aerojet Corporation facility. It had an Aerojet sign literally on the front grass. And in fact, I interviewed people working at the research library at New Mexico Tech who remembered that building and confirmed for me that it was there in the early 70s. And we were greeted in the hallway by a technician who said to my father in a very excited tone of voice, Ray, we've got it. We've got pictures of the event. We've got pictures of the domestic Pearl Harbor. So we were taken into a room there with about 20 different television monitors. And this individual took a Betamax-styled videotape upon which had been deposited some of the microfilm images 10 years before Betamax tapes entered the commercial market, certainly. And what we witnessed was about a 20-second film loop of one of the planes hitting one of the Twin Towers on September 11th of 2001, 30 years in the future. Now, I also remember times when the 9/11 event, as a domestic Pearl Harbor-like event within the continental United States, literally an attack on U.S. soil that such as had not been seen since the War of 1812, when, of course, the British troops burned down the White House. So this was a very significant event among the future events that they were gathering information about, because it was an attack at least a terrorist attack, if not a military attack, on the U.S. homeland. And there were times when my father, as one of the highly placed engineers in the project, who was reading the reports, the internal reports in which they were summarizing what they knew of future conditions and events, he was sometimes asked what he knew about this event that people were talking about in the program called 9/11, and he was describing the conventional view of the event. So in furtherance of my duty to uphold the U.S. Constitution and my oath of truthfulness as a leader of the truth movement, and as somebody who simply was a material witness to prior knowledge by the U.S. government of the events of 9/11, indeed in a context in which the man who was defense secretary on 9/11, Donald Rumsfeld, was serving as defense attaché to the very project I was on that had retrieved this data from the future, proof or evidence of a 9/11 linked terrorist attack, or at least plane attack on the Twin Towers. I wrote a very factual, very concise, single-spaced, 10-page affidavit that I submitted to the Vancouver 9/11 Tribunal. The result was that three principal figures in the 9/11 movement, namely Professor James Fetzer, researcher Kevin Barrett, and Barbara Honegger, used the unusual nature of my claims in that affidavit to begin basically attacking me as a witness and commenting about my testimony, which violates the canons of being a witness. You're not supposed to talk about you're not even supposed to know about other testimony. But they became aware of what I was claiming in my affidavit, began attacking me, began attacking the judge, which also violates the canons of legal ethics. And without even knowing that my story is true, and the fact that Donald Rumsfeld was the defense attaché on a project that had moving pictures of the 9/11 attacks 30 years before they happened, they made this peremptory judgment that I must be a liar or some kind of intelligence agent trying to disrupt the 9/11 truth movement, when in fact I was a critical witness to it, and they most of them withdrew from the Vancouver 9/11 Tribunal. Several of them, Fetzer and Barrett, went on to write these poison pen articles about me that totally distort my work, that distort my true experiences as a child participant in Project Pegasus, and as one of the chrononauts in the Jump Room program 10 years later, who has had the courage not only to participate in these projects in which new, dangerous and expensive technology is being researched and developed, but who had the political courage to step up to my country and what the U.S. government has done with their tax dollars, namely achieve time travel, and then 10 years later use it to get to Mars. But along the way, as a child who sat in many project meetings, many strategy sessions, and also lunches and dinners and cocktail parties with people like some Manhattan Project scientists like Agnew and Teller and Segre, some of the federal science administrators like Dr. Agnew again, or Stephen J. Lukasik when he was director of DARPA, or Ivan Browning when he was director of science and technology for CIA, individuals like Mr. Rumsfeld, who was the defense attaché to the project. I mean, I was witness to history. I was witness to advanced professionals in the defense technical community developing time travel and using it to find things out about the future. Well, along the way, they uncovered visual evidence of the 9/11 attacks. Now, Alfred, as a judge, believes that helps establish the mens rea, the legally culpable mental state, for Secretary Rumsfeld's duplicity in the 9/11 event. I don't believe that's the case. What the evidence shows is prior knowledge, and in an era of quantum access, where previously prior knowledge created a rebuttable presumption that one was either a conspirator or an accomplice after the fact, that one had aided and abetted if one knew about a future criminal act. After the advent of quantum access, that's no longer true. All knowledge may mean is simply knowledge. One can be a government bureaucrat or technician and have evidence of a future event and have no mens rea to commit the event, not even to know about it in the conventional way. So what happened was I wrote a completely truthful affidavit about what Project Pegasus knew about this future domestic Pearl Harbor event called 9/11. I was diligent. I spent a week of my own time, taking time out from my law practice. I'm a lawyer in solo private practice. I support myself. I have for 16 years without a single complaint being filed by one of my clients, much less any kind of ethical allegation against me. And I took a week out to write a hard-boiled 10-page analysis of exactly what they need to do about Project Pegasus, technical communities, and what
hold on, Andrew. Bernie's shuffling around back there. He's kind of bleeded you out there for a second. Bernie, did you wanted to jump in here for a second, didn't you?
Yes. What Andrew's talking about is what we got from the chronovisors. We had some intelligence about this 9/11 event very early on, but we didn't know what it meant. There were different views of the whole subject. When we viewed it, it was viewed by a lot of people, and I did some reconnaissance myself of that particular jump. It was like the Lincoln jump in Forbes Theater. It was a reasonable facsimile of Forbes Theater, because I had gone to the original Forbes Theater, measured it all out with a slide rule, with tape measures. And then when I made the jump, I measured it all out again, and it wasn't the same measurements. There were things that were missing. There were other things that were like, we had canvas curtains between the little booths, and the back hall was a little different. The stage was a little different. There were things missing like the floodlights, which were gas lights, and the fire brigade, and the water buckets or the sand buckets, and the rows and columns of the seats were different. It was very close. One to the untrained eye, one would say it was Forbes Theater. And that same theory applies to this 9/11 event, which they were questioning Andrew about. What we were viewing with that was something that was very similar, but the whole area in question was different. The buildings were different. Part of South Ferry was different, was missing. And that was a view from Atlantic Avenue down by the piers, Atlantic Avenue and Columbia Street in Brooklyn. We would view South Manhattan. You could clearly see the towers from there. So that whole area, part of the waterfront was missing. The water itself was different, different color, and it wasn't choppy. And then South Ferry was different. And then the buildings were very similar, but different. They weren't exactly the same height. I counted all the floors. The floors weren't the same amount of floors. The building was very similar looking, but it was different. So Andrew was criticized for talking about this highly classified project. I was told never to discuss it. We didn't know what it meant or what had transpired. We didn't see planes crashing into the building, just the buildings collapsing at some point. They didn't seem to be on fire the same way, because this is now after the fact. So we got tapes of the real event. So we had a very similar event on a chronovisor, but we didn't know what it meant. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So Andrew gave
it's kind of like it's kind of like,
he saw.
If I may, is it sort of like when you wake up from a dream where you've experienced what appears to be a parallel reality? When you come back, you're not sure if you're really awake or entirely sure what it is you saw in the first place?
Well, I'd say it's more real than that, but I had given a very accurate, because I was placed in these particular jumps. Is my ability to go there, because my photographic memory at the time, give specific details about my surrounding area, the bridge across Atlantic Avenue. They call it the BQE, and the bridge was different. I gave all the...
Well, exactly how was it different? What was different about it?
Well, the length across the street was different. The bridge was slightly narrower. The roadway was a lot cleaner, a lot flatter. The bridge, the ribs on the different I-beams were different. It's arched, that bridge, a particular way, and it sits on pedestals, each I-beam. There weren't as many I-beams. There weren't as many pedestals. So it was a similar bridge, very close, but it wasn't it. And then the view of South Manhattan that I gave, and the description of the building was different. So I had studied South Manhattan through pictures. There's many pictures of South Manhattan taken from a helicopter or a plane, looking from Brooklyn or looking from the South Manhattan from the Lower Bay, or the Upper Bay as they call it, and then looking towards Manhattan, South Ferry, and then north. And there's a lot of views of Manhattan in that area. So it wasn't.
Well, like the iconic Manhattan buildings are like the Chrysler Building and the Twin Towers and of course the Empire State. I mean, did they look like they were structurally different as well?
Well, I couldn't see as far as the Chrysler Building. Couldn't see that far up. I couldn't see as far as the Empire State Building. I couldn't see that far up. But I could see South Manhattan quite clearly. And then the seaport that's there, South Seaport. Lots of the Battery Tunnel were missing. And then between Manhattan, there's Governor's Island, because you have the Battery Tunnel not far away, which touches on Governor's Island, where there's a building for air recirculation, which sucks out the CO2 from the bottom and puts fresh air into the tunnel. That's about halfway between the Battery Tunnel from Brooklyn to Manhattan, or South Manhattan, called the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel. That was missing. And a lot of other details, which, I can give. The South Ferry, which was actually the complex was missing.
Well, as is customary, Bernie, instead of letting you go on, we're going to cut to a break. This is like the third time it's happened. It's classic. All right. Thank you, Bernie. Thank you, Andrew. We'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen. Don't you touch that dial at AmericanFreedomRadio.com.
Active. He can help you gain further skills such as website building, producing audio and video, and creating revenue streams in your own multimedia environment. Because Vinny supports such a wide range of people in the truth movement, he is not government or corporate backed and relies entirely on your donations. Give now, give generously, or subscribe for $10 a month for access to ad-free video archives. Just visit thevinnyeastwoodshow.com and click donate.
Do you realize every day we are being put under constant stress from wireless radiation? What's worse is that you don't even know that it's happening. It puts as much stress on our body as if we had a constant viral infection, draining our energy and sapping our strength, or just making us irritable and fatigued. These wireless fields are being emitted from computers, microwaves, mobile phones, power lines, and any electrical appliance. Now there is a solution. A group of research engineers in New Zealand have come up with an active shielding device that shields you from wireless radiation at a cellular level. Blue Shield comes in 3 models: a household, portable, and USB that plugs into any computer. The great thing about Blue Shield is it is very affordable and guaranteed to last. A one-off purchase will see you being protected for years to come. Visit AmericanFreedomRadio.com and click on the Blue Shield banner. Blue Shield, brought to you by theVinnyEastwoodShow.com.
Welcome back.
I've been to Reno, Chicago, Fargo,
It's
Minnesota,
a
Buffalo,
list of the
Toronto,
teleportation
Nashville,
facilities
Wichita, Tulsa, Ottawa,
that Andrew has visited.
visited.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Vinny Eastwood Show, the show that goes everywhere, man. And there's a lot of people who would sit back, hear what Andrew's saying, instantly dismiss it as fiction, not wanting to look into it.
If you take an active interest in maintaining the optimum health and well-being of yourself and your family, the New Zealand Journal of Natural Medicine is the magazine you've been waiting for. Having taken Australia and New Zealand by storm, the New Zealand Journal of Natural Medicine is now available in the UK and Europe. Visit www.nznaturalmed.co.uk or call 01626 337 531 to order your copy now.
No matter where you live, globalism affects you. Did you know that the Vinny Eastwood Show has more subscribers than New Zealand Herald TV and is New Zealand's most popular YouTube news channel, where warm-hearted humour and a list of awesome guests talk about crucial issues which the mainstream media ignore? A show where you, the listener, can phone up with questions, comments and suggestions of guests. Vinny is building a hub to connect truthers with raw information they need to become